Hello and welcome. In this video tutorial, I'm going to update the Pacific Trails Resort website using the existing Pacific Trails website files from Chapter 9 as my starting point to create a new version of the website. In this chapter's case study, we will create the reservations page and add a form between the main element tags. In my code editor, I'm going to go to my Chapter 9 folder and I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this and select Copy. I'm going to right-click in this dark gray area here and I'm going to select Paste. And I'm going to rename this by selecting right-click and rename. I'm going to delete this and type in the number 10, enter. I'm going to open up that Chapter 10 folder. I'm going to right-click on the CH9 Pacific and I'm going to rename that to CH10 Pacific. I'm going to begin with Task 3 and create the reservations page using my existing index.html page as my starting point. I'm going to open this and I'm going to select File, Save As. And I need to have this in my Chapter 10, my CH10 Pacific, and I'm going to name this reservations.html. And I'm going to select Save. I'm going to modify the page title, and after where it says Pacific Trails Resort, I'm going to put in a space, 2 colons, and I'm going to type in reservations. The reservations page, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look for the div ID, and I'm going to replace this home hero ID with the reservations-hero. I want to make sure that I add in the CSS styles for this reservation hero. So I'm going to go to my pacific.css file and I'm going to scroll to where I have the home hero, yurt hero, trail hero ID selectors, and I'm going to, after the trail hero, I'm going to put in a comma, reservations-hero, and then I'm going to go after the trail hero ID and I'm going to add in reservations hero, and I'm going to give this a background image of images reservations.jpg, and I'm going to save this. Command S. I'm going to go to my reservations page and I'm just going to turn on my show preview, and this is what my page looks like currently. I'm going to update the H2 and the content that's in here where it says enjoy nature and luxury. I'm just going to highlight that and I'm going to go ahead and type in reservations at Pacific Trails. I'm going to delete underneath this H2 this paragraph tag, the unordered list, and I'm going to highlight all the way to the bottom of this unordered list. I'm going to have this highlighted and I'm going to select delete or the backspace key. I'm going to add in a new H3 element. So I'm going to type H3. I'm going to use my curly braces inside of that H3 and it's going to say contact us today. And I have my exclamation point. I'm just going to select the tab key. After that H3 element, I'm going to type in a paragraph tag, so the letter P. And inside that paragraph tag, I'm going to go ahead and put my curly braces, and I'm going to type required fields are marked with an asterisk. And make sure I put that asterisk in there, and then a period. I'm just going to select the tab key. Now I'm going to go ahead and start building my form, and I'm going to give myself some space. So I'm just going to add in some extra returns there. I'm going to type the word form, and the method is going to be post, and the action is going to be https://web-dev-basics.net/scripts/pacific.php. And then after these closing double quotation marks, I'm going to add in autocomplete on, and I'm going to also put no validate. These two extra attributes in the form tag, autocomplete on and no validate. The autocomplete attribute makes the form easier to use by allowing the browser to suggest and automatically fill in values the user has typed before, such as their first name, last name, email, or phone number. To make this even smarter, I'm going to use specific autocomplete values for each field like given name, family name, email, and tel. This will help the browser know exactly what type of information belongs in each field, which improves both speed and accessibility, especially for mobile users. The no validate attribute, on the other hand, temporarily turns off the browser's built-in form validation. Normally, if a required field is left blank or the email address doesn't contain any @ symbol, the browser would stop the form from submitting and display a warning. By including no validate while we're building the styling, this is important, I can test the layout, spacing, and flow of the form without those interruptions. Later, when the form is complete, you will want to remove the no validate to let the browser's validation features work as expected. So this is only here while we're building the form so that we can test it. I'm going to go ahead and create our first label. It's going to be label, tab, and we have the for field, and it's going to be my F name. And then between this, it's going to have the asterisk and then first name. I'm going to add a colon after first name. We'll have the input type. It'll be text. This line creates a label and a text input for the user's first name. The label tells the user what to type, and the for attribute links it to the input box below. The input is a single line text field. The ID and name identified in the code. Required makes it mandatory. ARIA required helps screen readers, and autocomplete given name lets the browser suggest the user's first name. When a user clicks the label text first name, the cursor automatically moves into the input box with that ID. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this label. I'm going to do Control C, and I'm going to paste. And instead of my first name, this is going to be my last name. So this is going to be last name. And instead of given name, it's going to be family name. I'm going to go ahead and type the next label. And it's going to be the label for the email. My email. And it's going to be an asterisk and email and a colon. And the type is going to be email. And notice the for and the ID attributes match. And the name email matches as well. The required, meaning this is a required field. The ARIA required, true. And this is for accessibility. And then we have the autocomplete. And this tells the browser to suggest or autofill the user's email address if it's stored in your browser. The next label that I'm going to type is going to be my phone, and it's going to be phone, and it's not going to have the asterisk. It's not going to be required. In this part of our form, we're collecting the user's phone number. The label tells the user what to enter and is linked to the input by the for attribute. The input uses type tel to indicate a phone number and can trigger a numeric keypad on mobile devices. We've added max length 12 to limit the input and autocomplete tel so the browser can suggest saved numbers. This creates a simple, accessible, and user-friendly phone field. I'm going to go ahead and create another label. And this is going to be for my arrival. It's going to be an arrival date. And the input type is going to be date. The ID is going to be the same as the for label. The name is going to be the same for the form. That is something that you'll learn in PHP. It's not going to be required. and the autocomplete for this is going to be off. I'm going to create another label, and this is going to be my nights, and it's going to be nights. Here we're adding a field for the number of nights the user will stay. The label names the field and is linked to the input with the for attribute. Using type number provides a numeric input with arrows for easy selection, and the min and max attributes limit the range from 1 to 14. Autocomplete off keeps the browser from filling in previous values. I'm going to create one more label. It's going to be for my comments. This field lets users enter any comments or additional information. The label clearly names the field and links to the text area with the for attribute. The rows and columns set its size, while required and aria required true ensures the user can't leave it blank. Autocomplete off stops the browser from suggesting previous entries. I'm going to go ahead and after the text area, I'm going to put in some space. I'm going to type in an input, and this input type is going to be submit, and the value is going to be submit. This input type submit, value submit, creates a button that sends all the form information when clicked. It works with the form element, which uses method post and an action URL to send data to the textbook's PHP script for processing. JavaScript can validate the form in the browser or handle some processing, but full processing, like saving to a database, requires a server-side language. I'm going to save my work. I'm going to close my File Explorer. I'm going to open up Show Preview. Okay, so we've got a lot of work to do to make this form look presentable. I have opened the specific CSS style sheet, and I'm going to resize my screen so that I can see the changes that I'm going to make to my form. I'm going to scroll down in my Pacific CSS. I'm going to go right before the maximum width 32.5 rem media query, and I'm going to put in some space. And this form is going to be a Flexbox container with a single column layout. It will have a soft background, padding, rounded corners, and a subtle box shadow. So I'm going to type form and tab. This block of CSS styles your form so it looks clean, organized, and easy for users to fill out. Let's break it down piece by piece and see what happens when you watch your show preview in VS Code. In our form styles, we start with Display Flex. This turns the form into a flexible container, letting you arrange the form's content in a neat way. When you add Flex Direction column, everything stacks vertically. The gap 1 rem adds space between each form element. You'll see a small consistent gap between your labels and input fields. The max width 32 limits the form's width so it doesn't stretch too far on large screens. It keeps your form readable and nicely centered. The margin 0 auto centers the form horizontally on the page. The 0 is for top and bottom spacing, and the auto centers it left and right. Watch the form move into the center when you refresh the preview. Padding 2M and 1M adds space inside the form. 2M is for top and bottom, and 1M is for left and right. It makes your form feel less cramped. The background color gives the form a very light background color so it stands out from the page background. You can see the color change immediately in your preview. The border radius 0.5 m rounds the corners of the form slightly, giving it a softer, modern look. The box shadow 0, 2 pixels, 8 pixels, and the RGBA value of 0.5 is for the transparency. This adds a shadow behind the form, making it look like it's floating above the page. You can see it pop right away in the live preview. Some of the changes that you might try are to try to change the gap, the background color, or the border radius. Seeing the changes live may help you understand what each property does. I'm going to type in label. This CSS styles the label elements in your form, which are the text that tells users what each input field is for, like first name, last name, email. Let's break it down and see how it affects your code in the VS Code Show preview. The font weight 600 makes the label text slightly bold so it stands out from the input fields. When you look at your preview, you'll notice the text looks stronger and easier to read. The margin bottom, 0.25 em, adds a tiny bit of space below the label so it's not stuck right against the input box. Watch how the labels and inputs now have breathing room in your preview. The color, pound 003, changes the text color of the label to a very dark blue, almost black. You'll see the label text update immediately in your live preview. Try changing the font weight to 700 or the margin bottom to 0.5 em while watching the show preview. You'll see how some small tweaks can make your form look cleaner and more readable. I'm going to add in some input and text area styling. So I'm going to type in input, a comma, and text area, and then tab. The CSS styles all of your input and text area fields, which are the boxes where users type their information. Let's see how each line affects the form when you watch it live in the preview. Margin bottom 0 removes extra space below the input and text area, so it aligns neatly with your form layout. When you preview, notice the fields sit snugly beneath their labels or other elements. Padding 0.5 em adds space inside the field around the text. This makes typing more comfortable and the form looks less cramped. Watch how the text doesn't touch the edges of the box anymore. Border 1 pixel solid and then pound B0BEC5 gives the field a thin, light colored border. You'll see the input boxes outlined nicely in the preview. The border radius 0.25 em slightly runs the corners of the boxes. This gives a soft, modern feel compared to sharp corners. Font size 1 em sets the size of the text typed inside the input text area. 1 em matches the default font size of your page, keeping it readable. Background pound FFF makes the inside of the field white. This helps the text stand out and keeps the form looking clean. Transition border color 0.2 seconds ease in out adds a smooth animation whenever the border color changes, like when the field is focused. Watch in the preview. If you click inside a field, the border can gently change color rather than snapping instantly. Try increasing padding or changing border radius while watching the show preview. You'll see how small changes can make your form look much more polished and user-friendly. I'm going to add in a focus state for inputs. So I'm going to add in input focus and then text area focus. This CSS makes your input and text area fields look different when the user clicks inside them or tabs into them, helping the user know which field they are typing in. Input :focus and text area :focus targets only the fields that are currently active, meaning the user has clicked into them or is typing inside them. Watch the preview, click into a field, and notice the style change. Border color pound 003 changes the border color of the active field to a dark blue. This visually highlights the field so users know where they are typing. Outline None removes the default browser outline, the glowing or dotted line that appears when a field is focused. This gives you full control over the look of your focus style. You'll notice in the preview that only your custom border color changes without the default outline appearing. Click into each input and text area in your show preview window. You'll see the border color change instantly, showing how the focus works. Try changing the color to red or green to see how it looks. This is a great way to experiment and understand focus states. This CSS styles the submit button of our form, making it bold, clickable, and visually appealing. The background color sets the button's background to dark blue. Watch in your preview how the button stands out on the page. The color white makes the text on the button white, so it contrasts well against the dark background. The border none removes the default border that browsers add to buttons, giving you a clean, modern look. Border radius 0.25 m rounds the corner slightly, matching the style of your input fields and making the button look softer. Padding 0.75 m and 2 m adds space inside the button, 0.75 m top and bottom, and 2 m left and right. This makes the button larger and easier to click. Font size 1 m sets the text inside the button to match your form's font size for consistency. Font weight bold makes the button text bold so it's easy to see and emphasizes the action. Cursor pointer changes the mouse pointer to a hand icon when hovering over the button, letting the user know it's clickable. Transition background 2 seconds adds a smooth animation if the button background changes, like on hover. Try changing the color in your CSS and watch the smooth transition in your preview. The CSS changes the submit button's appearance when a user hovers over it with the mouse or taps into it, giving it visual feedback that the button is interactive. The input type equals submit :hover, and the input type equals submit :focus targets the submit button when either the mouse button hovering over it, which would be the hover state, or the button is focused, clicked, or reached via keyboard tab, which is the focus state. Watch in your preview, move your mouse over the button, or press tabs to focus on it. You'll see it respond. The background color #003 changes the button's background color when it's hovered or focused. Change it to #005 and watch the live preview. You'll see the button react when you hover or focus, making the form feel more interactive and user-friendly. I'm going to save my work, and I'm going to just open up my File Explorer. I'm going to right-click on this Reservations page and open with Live Server. Okay, so a couple things I don't like. I don't like the address on the left, nor do I like the reservations. I'm going to need some spacing in here between the page elements. I'm going to right-click and inspect. I'm going to want to center this content up here, and I'm going to want to center the address down here. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back into my reservations page, and I'm going to go to where I have the main, and I'm going to type in a div of center, and I'm just going to type tab, cut this closing div and place it behind the closing paragraph. I'll save this. And then I'm going to use this class again in the address. And I'm going to come down here to the address. I'm going to type in class, and it's going to be center. And I'm going to save. Now I'm going to go back to my Pacific CSS styles, and I'm going to go to after the input and before the @media query, and I'm going to type in a period center. The center class is a utility class that helps you center content both horizontally and vertically inside a container. We have applied it to our div and to our address to make everything inside those two elements look neat and centered on the page. The display flex turns the container into a flex container, which allows easy alignment of the items inside. The flex direction column stacks child elements, like headings and paragraphs, vertically instead of side by side. The line item center centers the content horizontally within the container. The justify content center centers the content vertically inside the container if the container has height. Text align center ensures that the text inside the headings or paragraphs is centered. Gap 0.1 m adds a tiny bit of space between the child elements. You can increase this for more spacing if you like. Margin 1 m or 0 adds space above and below the container so it doesn't touch other elements on the page. When I applied the center class to the div and address, it acts as a container, which results in all child elements are stacked vertically. They are horizontally and vertically centered. Text is centered inside each element.
default spacing on headings and paragraphs is removed for a cleaner look, you get a small gap between elements and space above and below the container. I added this center H2, center H3, center P selector. This selects only the direct children of the center class that are either an H2, an H3, or P elements, and this will remove the browser's default margins from these headings and paragraphs. It does not select any elements that are nested deeper inside other elements within the center class. The center class with the greater than sign and the H2, the greater than sign is known as the child combinator symbol. And the center class with the child combinator symbol H3 and the center class with the child combinator symbol paragraph. Margin 0 removes the default browser margins from headings and paragraphs inside the container so they line up. I'm going to pause the video and add in the media queries in the max width 32.5 rem media query. And this will apply CSS rules to smaller screens that are 520 pixels wide or smaller. I added my new media queries after the TD : before. Be sure to place your styles inside the media query before the closing curly brace, or you could accidentally create an error in your CSS. I'm going to close my reservations in the show preview, select the Pacific CSS and show in preview, and now I have them side by side. I'm going to close my File Explorer to give myself some more screen room. And on the left-hand side is going to be my base styles. So I'm just scrolling up to find my form base styles. And on the right-hand side is going to be my media queries styles. So let's look at the base styles on the left side of the screen that we use to style our form. And on the right are the changes we will use for smaller screens using a media query. Now, for you, I recommend that you have the reservations.html file open and you show preview. The base styles on the left work great for desktop screens, but on smaller screens, we want the form to fill the screen with and stay readable. The media queries I added will only override what styles need to change for smaller screens. I want to avoid repeating properties that don't change to keep the CSS cleaner. The max width 100% overrides the base max width 32em so that on small screens the form stretches the full width. The padding 1em reduces the padding from the base 2em, 1em to make it fit better on a smaller screen. I used a specific selector like form label inside the media query to style only the labels that are inside forms. This way, it won't affect other labels elsewhere on the website. For example, another type of label would be a navigation label, which is the text used to describe links or buttons. We don't have any right now in our website, but in case we ever used one, we don't want to overwrite those styles. The width 100% on form label, form input, and form text area ensures each element fills the container. Notice there is no width set. That means label, input, and text area will take their default width. For input and text area, the width is usually just enough for the content or default browser styling, not the full form width. For label, it's inline by default, so it only takes the width of its text content. For the media query where it says width 100%, it forces each label, input, and text area to stretch across the entire width of the form. On small screens, this prevents inputs from being too tiny. You could also add a display block for this property, which ensures each element starts on a new line, taking full width. Without this, label would stay in line with the next element. Here we're targeting the Submit button specifically. The width 100%, this makes the button stretch across the entire width of the form, which is especially helpful on smaller screens so it's easy to tap. The margin top 0.5em, this adds a little space above the button, separating it from the form fields above so it doesn't feel cramped. Inside this media query, we have made the form stretch to the full screen, stack all labels and inputs vertically, and made the Submit button full width. These changes make the form easier to read and use on small screens like phones and tablets. I'm going to save my work, File, Save. I'm going to open back up my File Explorer. I'm going to right-click on my reservations and open with Live Server. I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm just going to hit the Submit button. On the left-hand side, your page should look like this. So this should be your URL at the top, the webdevbasics.net. So if you see this screen, that means that the form is successfully connected. Now let's go to the back button and let's just go ahead and type in some values. I'll type in my name and then I'll just type in comments and I'll say test and I'll select submit. Great. So I am getting some values in here. Next, I'll go back to my form in Visual Studio Code. I'll scroll up to where the form method is and I'll remove the no validate. I'll make sure that I remove all the empty space in there and I'll save my form. So I'll do Control S. I'll go back out to my browser and I'll just refresh. And this time, notice I type in test this time and I select submit. Notice now I get the required field pop-ups. So it's telling me I have to at least put in my last name and I at least have to put in an email. If I hit submit again, it's telling me that this field is required. So I'll type in Marianne at somewhere.com. Now it's not going to check to make sure this is a valid email address. And now I'll select submit because I've chosen all the required. And look, it works. Let's hit the back button one more time. And this time I'll add in a phone number, 555. And notice if I keep adding more digits, remember it will go up to 12. So even though there's 5, so I've got one extra 5. My arrival date I'll type as November 11th, 2025. And I'll just put in 12 nights and comments. Remember, I have to have that because it has required in front of it. These are my comments. And I'll submit. All right. So once again, none of this validates. So if I hit the back button, you can see this is what our form now looks like for the reservations.html file. This wraps up our work on the reservations page. In this chapter, we focused on creating a complete form, learning how to structure it with HTML, style it with CSS, and make it responsive using media queries. We explored labels, inputs, text areas, and the submit button, and saw how CSS can improve the layout, spacing, and usability on both desktop and mobile screens. We also touched on form validation, which ensures that users enter data correctly. Right now, some validation comes from HTML attributes like the required and type, but in other classes, you'll see how JavaScript and PHP can handle more advanced validation and processing, making the form fully functional and secure. By practicing these skills, you've learned the foundation for building interactive, user-friendly web forms that adapt to different devices and provide a smooth experience for your visitors. Thanks for watching.